Let's bring in Tom Switzer from the US Study Centre. Tom, this was quite a performance, the whole hearing, really, because you had Hillary Clinton up against a couple of potential Republican nominees as well down the track, face to face, and going at it over what is a very sensitive issue in the United States. What did you make of it?
Well, look, the Republicans have been baying for blood for several months now, and they had their opportunity. And I think the media conventional wisdom is probably right that she did give a very forceful defence of the administration's position in Benghazi. The problem, though, is that she keeps saying that she takes full responsibility for what happened, that the buck stops with her. But nevertheless, throughout the course of the hearings, she made it quite clear that she wasn't responsible for anything. And the bottom line is this. I don't think this will go much further, frankly, but the bottom line is that the attacks against the US Embassy in Benghazi were not spontaneous, as Susan Rice, the US ambassador to the UN, originally said, and nor were they linked to this YouTube video, this anti-Muslim video put out by this crank. So this has been the problem right from the outset for the Obama administration. They've dithered, they've equivocated, they've given different interpretations, and it's culminated in the President's top choice for Secretary of State, Susan Rice, to lose priority for that position. And so they have paid a price.
That's right. And look, Hillary Clinton, whether she takes responsibility or not, will now move on. She hands over the reins to well, John Kerry is all but certain to get the nod. They'll be back before senators again on Thursday for that nomination hearing. But what about Hillary Clinton's future? No doubt she'll take a bit of time out, but if she is going to run for president in 2016, she can't waste too much time. Do you think this is on the cards?
Oh, indeed. And in fact, within a week of the last presidential election in November, the media conventional wisdom started saying that she was the favourite for the Democratic nomination and that the favourite for the Republican nomination was, of all people, Jeb Bush. So another Bush-Clinton contest, just like 20 years ago. So much for America being a meritocracy. No, look, I rate her chances. She will be 69 years of age in 2016. But bear in mind, Ronald Reagan was 69 when he ran for president in 1980. And, of course, the average life expectancy has risen in the last 30 years. So I think that she will come to the nomination process with a very good resume. She had 8 years as a very activist, engaged First Lady. She then had 8 years as a senator from New York. And then, of course, she's had 4 years as a Secretary of State. So she'll go to the presidential nomination process with the best resume for a presidential candidate since George H.W. Bush when he ran in 1988.
And a united party behind her this time, which is not something that Obama had 4 or 5 years ago.
Good point. Absolutely. No, she commands a great deal of respect among both Liberals and centrists in the Democratic Party, so I suspect she will be the favourite. But, of course, all things are conditional on her health. She did have a health scare a few months ago, so you have to put that in perspective as well.
That'll be a factor. What about the bloke who's already in the job and back in the job, despite, I should point out, Tom Switzer, your predictions that he wasn't going to get there?
Well, David, you're absolutely right. I'm glad you raised that because I've been a guest on your program, thanks to Sky News, for many years now, and I have to eat humble pie. I was one of the few Australian commentators who thought that Obama would lose, and it was largely because I thought the persistently high levels of unemployment, skyrocketing levels of debt, the general sense of angst, anxiety in the community would hurt the Democratic incumbent, but I was wrong. And I was wrong for this reason, and President Obama made this quite clear in his inaugural address. I think that the demographic changes are taking place in the United States are happening a lot faster than anyone predicted, and I think this younger generation of Americans are far more progressive and liberal on a lot of social issues than their elders. So I think this has all the ingredients of a potential political realignment in America, which makes it very difficult for Conservatives and Republicans.
Yeah, and clearly the Democrats are keeping up with that demographic change much better than the Republicans are at the moment, at least. But looking at his... yeah, sorry.
No, I was just going to make the point. In the last election, minorities by a margin of 4-1 voted for the Democrats. And this is the point. As Asian Americans, Latino Americans and black Americans, as their proportion in the voting electorate rises past 30-40% of the electorate, and the white share of the national vote declines, this is the very point. So Republicans need to do a lot of work to reach out to particularly Latino immigrants.
Now, the inauguration speech we heard from the President earlier this week, there was a heavy focus on climate change. A lot of people have then asked his press secretary, Jay Carney, well, hang on, you didn't talk about it much during the election campaign. Now you are. What are you going to do? We still don't really know, but given the deadlock still in Congress politically, what can he do? What do you expect him to do?
Well, I suspect he'll use the power of the executive to overreach the Congress and use the Environmental Protection Agency to ramp up regulations, because there is no way in the world that he could possibly legislate a carbon tax or a cap-and-trade emissions trading scheme so long as the Republicans have control of the Congress. You have to bear in mind the first 2 years of President Obama's administration, he had huge majorities of Democrats in both the House of Representatives and the Senate, and he couldn't even get on the Senate floor a modest climate bill that consisted of little but loopholes to the major polluters. He couldn't even debate that on the Senate floor, much less pass it. And the other point to bear in mind is that Obama, by all criteria, has completely and utterly failed to try to convince the Chinese, the Indians, the Brazilians, the South Africans to reduce their carbon footprint. He failed at Copenhagen, he failed at Cancun, Durban, Doha. Kyoto, as you know, has expired. So I think Tony Abbott is right when he says that the Democrats will not be able to legislate any kind of carbon pricing system. But having said that, he does have the power of the executive to use the EPA to ramp up regulations on carbon, and that's exactly what I suspect he will try to do.
Looking at other ways of skinning that cat. Tom Switzer from the US Study Centre. Always good to talk to you. Thanks so much for that.
Thanks so much, David.